Hello everyone, my name is Ruki Obaho. Today I'm continuing the series from a chapter of my book called Transforming My Character. That's the things we learn along the way. And when I talk about the way, it's the journey that God takes us through as we go to finding our purpose. The last time I talked about this topic, I talked about the fact that the route that God chooses, it tests you. Today I'm going to be talking about the fact that the route God chooses, it works on your character. This is taken from the book of Psalm 105, 17 to 19, where it says, then he, which is, we're referring to God, he sent someone to Egypt ahead of them. Joseph, who was sold as a slave, they bruised his feet with fetters and placed his neck on an iron collar. Until the time came to fulfill his dream, the Lord tested Joseph's character. That was taken from the New Living Translation. So today I'm going to be talking about the fact that the route God chooses, it works on your character. I said many years back when I was with Jude, we went to an event in Wembley, London. On our way back home, we got into a heated argument. I couldn't take the argument anymore because his nagging was worse than a woman's. So I asked him to stop the car so I could get off. But he refused. I asked him several times and he ignored me. And as he ignored me, something switched in my head. And I grabbed hold of the steering and started to twist it around. I was not sure what I was doing, but at that point I was very mad and I didn't care if we had an accident or not. I didn't care if I was going to die, and it didn't matter whether I was going to go to heaven or to hell. All I knew was that I was mad and I could not control my temper. Somehow, thank God, Jude was able to get the car under control. But seeing that still didn't stop the car and that the argument continued, you won't believe what happened next. Right in the middle of the motorway, I started throwing everything I could lay my hands on out the car window. So he had no choice but to stop the car, which he did immediately. I ran out of the car, but of course he came after me. But I just about made it to the public phone booth. As I tried to reach out for the phone to call the police, however, he grabbed it out of my hands and we started struggling with the phone. This was on the highway. By this time, people had gathered and someone asked me if he could call the police. I said yes. By the time the police got to the scene, however, he had driven off. That is Jude, my ex-husband. So there I was, many miles from home and with no money on me. I was stranded. I remember that day very well. The police had to give me £10 and a ride to the train station. What a day. Eh? Now, what do you think living with me would have been like? Jude was very abusive, and abuse should never, under any circumstances, be condoned. But as you can see, I also had a nasty temper on me. It was not good at all. But please do not get me wrong. I did not go about looking for trouble. I was actually very quiet. But it only took a little spark to ignite something in me. And as I would tell people back then, the way you make your bed with me was the way you would lie in it. If you were nice, then I was nice. But if you were nasty, then you had definitely met your match. Now, I'll just stop there and just really explain what I'm just trying to say. I'm trying to say here. That means people controlled the way I reacted. People were in control, and I always tell people the key to your life, the key to your happiness, the key to your peace of mind, the key to your joy is in your hands. You are the one that choose to give it away. Here I'm saying I'm a nice person, I am a quiet person, but my reaction depended on how you reacted to me. If you were a tiger, then the tiger in me will come out. If you were spiteful, then the spiteful person in me will come out. That means those people or anybody then had the power to control me. Can you imagine this, the foolishness of what that sounds like? Even thinking about it now, I can't help but think how silly I was then. Anyway, I'll continue. I had a really nasty temper. It actually ran in my family and was one of the first things God had to walk on, because it was bound to hinder me in the future, just as it hindered Moses. The Israelites whom Moses led out of Egypt were a difficult bunch for him to handle. They were quick to complain over every little thing, especially when they were hungry or thirsty. One time they complained that they were thirsty, and God instructed Moses to strike a rock once so that water could come gushing out. Out of anger and frustration, though, Moses hit it twice. Can you imagine what I would have done if I were Moses? I might have picked up that rock and hit the people with it. I believe that was one of the reasons God allowed Moses to go and cool off in the wilderness. As you have already read, the first time he tried to defend his people, he killed somebody. When I say already read, it means an earlier chapter of the book, so you might have to get the copy, so you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, who knows how many more people he would have killed if God had not sent him off to get some anger management classes in the wilderness. Moses had problems with anger, but for him to lash out like that, something must have been eating away at him. Was he facing an internal battle within himself? According to Eddie Gibbs, and now in the book Overcoming the Dark Side of Leadership, How to Become an Effective Leader by Confronting Potential Failures, Eddie Gibbs says, although any analysis of Moses personally can only be conjecture, it would seem reasonable to assume that his public outbursts of anger in the face of difficult people may indicate some repressed anger and resentment from his early years. Where did this anger come from? Did Moses' anger issues arise from feelings of abandonment and neglect? I mean, he was abandoned to his fate, to his own fate in the river as a few months old baby. He grew up in the enemy's house and saw firsthand their cruelty to his own people, including his daddy, his mommy, and his big sister. Was that why he was so angry that he committed murder? Also, there was a time Moses spent 40 days alone with God, away from the people. While he was there, the people got very impatient. Thinking something had happened to Moses, they demanded that another God be created for them. After pleading with God on their behalf, Moses came down with what we know as the 10 Commandments engraved on the tablets by the very finger of God. But when Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf to the people. And he took the calf the people had made and burnt it in the fire. Then he ground it to powder, scattered it on the water, and made the Israelites drink it. Wow. That was taken from Exodus chapter 32, verse 16 to 20, and that was the NIV version. To be honest, it does not matter what anyone has done to you. That's some real temper that must be dealt with. How can you go about smashing things and trying to force people to do the unspeakable? Because of his anger issues, Moses did not get to see the promised land. Now, although I certainly have not killed anybody, I definitely needed my wilderness experience. You hear a lot of Christians talk a lot about dreading the wilderness. When you have been through one, however, you start to see that it was something you needed. I had issues that God had to deal with. I had anger issues, bitterness, negativity, and a lot more. But when Jesus is really in your life, there has got to be a change. You used to do these things when your life was still part of the world. But now is the time to get rid of anger, rage, malicious behavior, slander, and dirty language. Don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. Put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. That was taken from the book of Colossians 3, verse 7 to 10, and I read the New Living Translation. So it talks here about malicious behavior. Okay, let's talk about that. When I was in primary school, we had this next door neighbor who used to take me to and from school every day. His daughter did something that offended me. Sorry, I'll just read that again. I said, when I was in primary school, we had this next door neighbor who used to take me to and from school every day. His daughter did something that offended me, but I can't even remember what it was. However, for 1 whole year, I entered her father's car but did not say a word to her. In the end, I made sure she was the one who had to come and speak to me first. I knew she loved the old Mills and Bones novel series. So one day I decided I wanted to read one. I didn't read it inside the house, but rather, it's just making me laugh. I sat out in front of my house in a strategic position where I knew she could definitely see me. I knew it was something she was addicted to and could not resist. Guess what? It worked. I can still remember her voice saying, Rookie, can you please lend me your novel to read after you had finished reading it? Yes. But it turned out to be a novel she had already read. Oh, what a shame. As for me, I felt so pleased with myself. But what kind of behavior is that? Pride? Spiteful? Yes, I was very spiteful. And as negative things started happening to me, I got worse. There was a lot of garbage inside of me that was not producing good things. And as Jesus said, a good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. That was taken from the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 45. I think this is pretty straightforward. If you want to know what's in your own heart, then pay close attention to what comes out of your mouth. I had a lot of negativity inside of me. And I can recall when someone had to sit me down to tell me that I was very negative. I remember telling her with tears streaming down my cheeks, "You don't know what I've been through in life." As you can see, I threw the victim card in her face. What she said, of course, was true. It didn't matter what positive comments you said to me. Rather than say thank you, I found the way to think of something negative to say in response. Oh, and the words that came out of my mouth were like fire. I could slice you into two with my mouth. And I didn't have to dig deep to think of what to say to spite or hurt you with. But going by Jesus' statement, there comes a time when you have to really sit down and think, where is all this coming from? It even gets more complicated because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. This is no longer about what you say, but what you are thinking in your heart, which is heavily influenced by what is stored in your heart, which in turn is what you become and also what you attract. Throughout life, we experience negative things, and without realizing it, we store them up. Soon enough, these things start to manifest in ways we cannot explain, and then we cannot believe what we have become. God had to put a stop to all of that, and He really started dealing with me about my anger issues. I remember God saying to me, "You would rise to a new level of overcoming. You have already begun to see patterns in your life that has consistently opened the door to the enemy's work against you. These patterns will become increasingly apparent as you progress and punish disobedience with your obedience. Rejoice in this process. Your struggle is not over. But if you look back, you can see that victory has come more speedily than in time past. This is because you learned to release your anger and bitterness and have refused the victim position. You will continue to rise up to defeat the enemy more effectively as you choose to exercise your faith in me to bring you through." I don't know if this has been your experience, but if it has, don't you just hate it when you bring your case against people who have offended you before God and God starts to point the finger at you? It's not funny at times, at the time. It's not funny at the time, but God knows how to use the trouble you're experiencing in life to point out the flaws in your own behavior so that you can change and become the person He wants you to be, so that you can fulfill your purpose in life. The good thing is that once you have made those changes, the people around you are forced to change to accommodate you or to say goodbye. I really had to deal with my anger issues based on the things I had experienced from a young age, the rejection and the hurts. Did I have every reason to be angry and bitter? Yes. Then again, what was the gist of what God was saying to me? He was simply saying that the enemy had been defeating me because of my anger, my bitterness, offenses, playing the victim, etc. Because of all that, I was a defeated Christian. And you'll be surprised to learn how many defeated Christians there are today because of this. I used to be a person who was easily offended, but Jesus began to teach me that offenses are unavoidable. He reminded me of what he said to his disciples. It is impossible that no offenses should come, but woe to him whom they come, whom to sorry, but woe to him through whom they do come. You find that in Luke chapter 17, verse 1. So, in other words, do not worry about who offends you, because I will take care of them. But let me work on you first. During that period, I remember buying a Joyce Meyer book called Power Thoughts and reading it bit by bit. One day, as I opened it up to read, I opened the section I was to read, and there it was in front of me. The power thought for that session was, I shall not be offended. It was a Friday morning, and I immediately called my bishop and told him that I felt that God was speaking to me about offenses. He told me to prepare to share it with the church on Sunday. So Sunday came, and I remember standing in front of the church and telling everyone that God was dealing with me in the area of offenses. I shared what I believed God had put in my heart that day. But then I recall that someone jokingly told me later that as I was talking, she felt like walking up to me and giving me a slap across the face to see how I would react. Well, I can honestly say that I'm not sure how I would have reacted then or even now, but I can assure you that after a few years of attending God's training in the wilderness, I know for a fact that I'm not the person or the same person that I used to be back then. So I've been talking about the routes that God takes you through and how He transforms your character. I just want you to look back. I don't know how long you've been a Christian. I just really want you to look back at your character and say, everything that I've gone through, what has it done? What have I learned from it? Am I still as angry? Am I still as bitter? Are those things the things that are opening the doors to the enemy? There's no point in going through a wilderness experience and coming out to the other side worse than you went in before. But you should be able to look at yourself and say that through this thing, through this pain, through this headache, through the tears that I went through, I'm now a different person because I learned. Like my bishop would say, if experience does not teach you, it will cheat you. So I'm going to stop here today, and I just pray again for the grace to be able to walk away from things that you're struggling with, to be able to let go of the anger, the bitterness, and just hold on to what God is doing in your life, because until you empty your hands, you will not have the space in your hands to hold whatever it is that God wants to give to you. Till you tune into this channel again, I just want to say God bless you. God touch your heart. God use a word from this session to really minister to you, and you'll be able to deal with that thing you've been struggling with. God bless you.